6:02. Sorry for the delay. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up if you would. I'm going to cool. Thank you, Ray. I see you. You're the only one who's on brave enough for the video other than me. So that's fine. My camera that I want to have working is not working. So I'm down here. If you don't know what this is my studio. And apparently in Google Hangouts, for whatever reason, the external camera doesn't want to work. So I'm using my MacBook One. So that's where I'm at right now. So that's why I'm leaning funny and my microphone is kind of over here. So if I'm speaking too loudly into it or if things are a little weird or muffled, I'm just going to adjust it this way. There we go. So now you can kind of see where we're at. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is James O'Hagan. I am the Director of Digital and Virtual Learning for the Racine Unified School District, and I'm also part of the Wisconsin High School Esports Association. Jesse Schwingel's on here as well too. He now works at CISA 10, and he is one of the people who's also kind of one of the founding members of the Wisconsin High School Esports Association. And hopefully what we're going to do here, sorry if I keep messing with this, I keep leaning on my headset. What we're hoping to do today is take you through, get you on the start of a 3-day session, 3-day, 1-hour session, where we kind of get into what it means to be a GM or a coach. Now, you're probably looking at this title going general manager. What the heck does that mean? And really what we've been kind of learning as we've been going through this process is that there are people who are good coaches and there's people who are good general managers. Not everybody knows every game that you're being asked to be a coach of. So a general manager is kind of sometimes more of a appropriate term because in some cases the kids are going to know more about the games than you do, and that's okay. Sometimes it's important for us to kind of step out of our safety nets and think about what I know as teachers we sometimes tend to need to be the experts all the time, and in this case you don't have to be. And the format for this too is as we're going through this, we do have a small enough group that if you have questions, comments, or need some help along the way as we're going through all this, feel free please to stop, speak up, ask a question. Again, I'm trying this with Google Hangouts, and so going to see how well this works because we have access to it. I just want to check and make sure I'm not missing anything on chat, and I'm not. I see everybody's kind of starting to pop in here, but I just want to make sure that I've got all of our video back up. I had everything absolutely perfect, and now there we go. Now I can see everybody's video if they want to pop up. So again, if as we're going through this, Jesse, if you see anything in chat that comes up, if you wouldn't mind just letting me know in case I missed something, and we'll go ahead and get started with all of this. So again, welcome. This is our first time trying this out and seeing if this will actually work. So today's agenda, we're going to do a brief introduction for all of us. There's only a few of us here, so it shouldn't take us too terribly long. We're also going to give you kind of an esports 101 if you don't know a whole lot about esports, but you've been asked to be part of this. Hopefully this will kind of give you some basics, some overviews as to what you're kind of being asked to do. I want to give you a kind of brief overview of what the Wisconsin High School Esports Association is all about. And I guess you could say the homework or the thing that you're going to be asked to kind of produce through this, and it's nothing too major, but it is something important because you are going to get asked a lot about esports when you start coaching it or get involved with it, is what's your elevator pitch? What are the things that when people ask, why is it you do this? You're going to want to be able to speak intelligently to them. It's really important right now, especially because this is so new and because there are a lot of educators who don't know a whole lot about this, both administrative and teachers, who hear a lot of things in the news about the negatives around gaming culture. It's really important to really kind of focus on what is your elevator pitch, why it is that what you're doing is important, and why it is what you do is important to be able to articulate as well. And then we'll have some brief conclusions. So let's first, if anybody has any questions or any comments or anything like that, we're going to give you the opportunity right now to have an introduction, an icebreaker here. So let's start. I kind of see people up here, and if you would please unmute your mic when I call on you. I feel like the teacher in class. But what I'd like for you to do is tell us who you are, where you're from, what your involvement is right now with esports, and what is your favorite game that you like to play. So I will just start. You guys know a little bit about me. James O'Hagan, Director of Digital and Virtual Learning. I've been involved in esports now for 5 years. I oversee 5 high school esports programs in the city of Racine, Wisconsin for Racine Unified School District. And right now my favorite game to play is Magic the Gathering Arena. So I see Moya. Did I say that correctly? Oh, okay. Please go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody. You're one of the few people who I've met who prefer Dota over League, and I applaud you for it because I really like Dota as well. So that's amazing. I think you're the only other person I bring up Dota. Jesse will know this. I brought up Dota before, and people are like, yeah, no. And I'm like, yeah, come on, Dota. And it's like, nah. So I'm glad I have some solidarity with you, Mai. Very nice to meet you. Ray Bautista, you're up next. You're still muted. Oh, there you go. Yep, now we hear you. And Ray, it's great that you're on too. It's nice to know you're from the south side of Milwaukee because we've been wondering when Milwaukee was going to start to embrace this, and you're the first that I know of in the city of Milwaukee who's kind of stepping into this. So thank you for being here. It's very nice to have you. Good. All right, Jesse, go ahead and introduce yourself to the group. Hear ya. Oh. All right, man. Very nice. And you're now at CISA 10, so you're kind of handling, you're able to put the message out to a bunch of people in a broader area now. Yeah. Nice. Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. Thank you. Uh, Amy, go ahead. Please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself. Oh, yes, we talked last week. Well, that's why we're doing this. Well, this is why we're getting together like this. You don't have to have all the answers. That's the beauty of all this. Is that for a lot of us, I hate using the phrase, but we're flying the plane as we're building it. So there's a lot of that going on, and you being in the eSchool network, you're great about flexibility and meeting kids where they're at, and so you're a perfect fit for this, if, in my mind at least. So be proud of that for stepping in, even though you don't know the games. That's okay. All right, Peter, please go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. A little louder, if you would. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you said, and welcome, you're relatively a neighbor to Racine. You're just a little bit to the west. Um, you said 46 and you said 25 had no prior co-curricular experience. Is that correct? That's a big number. That's a huge number, especially when you, if, and we'll get into a little bit about this later, but when you think about those numbers, especially now, it really kind of starts to really make you think a little bit about what this all is and what this all can be. Is League of Legends the only game you're playing right now, or are you going to move into some of the other games as well? It's a great gateway entry game because it's the barrier is very small to get kids involved very quickly, even if they have little experience in it. So that's great. Well, Peter, thank you for being here. And I saw Lucas was on here for a minute, but Lucas bounced out. I think Lucas is Richards. He's another one of our Wisconsin High School Esports Association members. But yeah, like I said, it looked like he bounced out. So we will continue on. So what is esports? And this may sound like a odd question to ask, But very simply, it is organized competitive video games, okay? And when you're looking at this photo here, this is what a lot of people think about when they think of organized competitive video games, and they think about esports. But I also want to bring attention to situations such as these. When you look at this group right here, this is my Horlick High School Overwatch team. And we're talking about not just boys who are participating in this space, but also girls as well, and girls of color, boys of color. So it's important that we realize that this is not, the stereotype is not going to fit in this, because this is a much broader group that we're trying to get hold of. And also, we're talking about situations such as these. This is a gentleman in Japan who, if you look very closely, I believe he's playing Dota 2 in that game. And he's using assistive technology to allow him to play the game. So we're not just, again, focused on the kids who we typically may stereotypically think are gamers, but we're thinking about this as being an all-inclusive opportunity for everybody to participate in gaming as well. So when we talk about esports, we want to spell it this way, and it's important. And Jesse may kind of, I don't know if you're going to roll your eyes a little bit on this, because I know I make a big deal about this, but it is a big deal. Esports spelling like this, not with a capital S, never with a dash, because this is kind of how people are found out, I guess you could say, whether they are legit or not. There's a lot of people who entered the space years ago, me included, who is using the capital S as well. But it's not only been kind of deemed official. If you go on to, say, the esports subreddit on Reddit, and you try to spell it a different way, and a bot will pop up and tell you you're spelling it wrong in your comments. But it's important to this, because this is all about branding, and it's important for branding. For example, when we talk about the NFL is all capital letters, and nobody would ever spell the NFL with a lowercase n and a capital F and a capital L, or capital N and an F and an L, because what we're trying to do is talk about branding, and we're talking about professionalism, and putting the message out to everybody that we are legitimate. When we talk about the Wisconsin High School Esports Association, we are a nonprofit organization now. We have an advisory board right now that will be moving to a board of directors. So we are really trying to build a professional stake in high school esports in Wisconsin. And in a lot of cases, when you start to travel around or talk to other people from other states, there's a variety of different experiences that are going on right now in states. So it's important that when we talk about this, that we are talking about a high quality brand, if you will. And when we're talking about esports, esports is a singular. So for you English teachers, if there are any here, the incorrect use is esports are. That's not how you use it. Esports it's a singular. Just like how you would talk about how sports is something. Sports is life. Sports is made up of things like baseball, basketball, and football. Esports is made up of games like League of Legends, Overwatch, Smash Brothers, so on and so forth. So any questions, comments just on that little bit right there? Is there anything that's popping up in the chat that I need to be brought aware of? Because I can't see the chat right now, so. Oh, we'll get into that stuff. Don't worry. Wow, you're getting into the nuts and bolts, man. You're getting into the nitty gritty, all right? It's okay. That's a fair question. That's a fair question to ask. We will get to that question here in just a little bit. So I just want to give you kind of the association overview here. So the big thing, of course, is our mission. And this is important because mission describes what it is that we do. And the Wisconsin High School Esports Association governs, supports, and promotes the growth of high school esports through community development, advocacy, equitable participation, and interscholastic competition to enrich the educational experience. And you'll notice that kind of that the words video games are not in there at all. We're talking about this as being part of a rich educational experience. So if anybody asks what it is that you're joining, this is the best way to describe it as part of our association's mission, is what you're looking to join. And that's our logo. And these are the games we play. So right now, the games that we are focused on playing is Super Smash Brothers and Overwatch. Those are going to be your fall sports And then League of Legends and Rocket League are going to be your spring sports. Now, I know, Mai, you were talking about you're up in Sheboygan, and I think I know the guy, is Mike Jabber the guy who helped get you guys started up there? Okay. Yeah, I know Mike and I have chatted back and forth. He reached out, and I was very happy to hear that he was able to get some things started. Now, even though League of Legends is a spring sport, that does not mean that you're kind of limited in participation. There's other ways that you can participate, and we can talk about those, but they would be likely outside of the Wisconsin High School Esports Association. But that doesn't mean you can't practice, and that doesn't mean we can't set up scrims with other teams or other schools. But the season, just so you know, is going to be particularly in the spring. But the other things we talk about when we talk about the Wisconsin High School Esports Association is we talk about health and diversity and community and equity. All these things are important. As much or as important as the games that we are playing, we also want to promote those things as well too when we're talking about this. Now, to speak to Ray's question, he kind of popped a question about dues, and I think this is a good point to talk about this right now, because I know that there are some who say, we're only going to play one game, or we're going to play all 4 games, and do we have to pay per student, and do we have to pay a school due? The dues are going to be by school and one time a year. So whether you play 1 game or whether you play 4 games, it's $100 for your school. And if you think about how much it costs, if people push back on where that $100 is going to come from, again, we're a nonprofit organization, so by you giving that $100, that allows us to not have to charge for things like our state championship. So that's going to cover the cost, not for your travel to get there, but to cover the cost of you getting into the facility, of the event that day, the trophies and things like that. So that cost is a shared cost among all in the organization. It's a heck of a lot less expensive than trying to run a football team. I know that from personal experience, where a child's uniform costs about $1,500 a piece. So if you get any pushback on that for that $100, please let us know. And if you're a school that is a Title I school, or you're in financial difficulties, we can absolutely work with you to make sure that we don't want to turn anybody away. So even if your school does have, like I said, financial difficulties, or if you're having trouble locating funding, just let us know, and we will work with you to make sure that we want to make sure kids are playing. We want to make sure kids are playing. The financial stuff is very secondary, so we can still work with you and make sure that you have that experience. Okay? Does that answer your question enough, Ray? Cool. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up there. So kind of jumping now over to this. So we're about halfway through, but this is kind of the meat of tonight. And this is talking about your elevator pitch. Now, an elevator pitch, can anybody tell me what an elevator pitch, what that means, what that is? Any thoughts or ideas? This is where I get to be Socratic and ask the question. Nobody's going to be brave enough to just kind of guess at what an elevator pitch is? Very close. So the idea of an elevator pitch, you're almost there, Ray. The idea of an elevator pitch was something that was, the belief was that, hey, you got into an elevator with a CEO of a company, and you've only got maybe 5 or 10 floors of a ride with them. So you only have that amount of time to sell your idea to them before they get off on their floor. So this is kind of really trying to, again, develop that. Do you have 30 seconds to tell your story? Do you have a minute to tell your story? Do you have 5 minutes to tell your story? Why it is you're doing what you do. So we really want to have people and help people to develop these stories, because that helps us to have other conversations with other school districts. When they hear your story, they will hopefully become interested enough to ask other questions. So it's not a matter of you giving a 30-minute spiel. It's a matter of giving them just enough where they bite and they go, okay, tell me more about this. Now, so the big questions are, what do you want to accomplish? That's when you're looking at your elevator pitch. Again, we want to think kind of beyond the games. And I want to share what in Racine Unified, our elevator pitch is made up of 5 things. I want to redefine athletic culture. I want to diversify opportunities for student participation. I want to increase collegiate and career pathways. I want to promote good mental and physical health, and I want to honor the importance of play. I've said those things so many times right now that I can pretty much get them out to somebody in about 10 to 15 seconds when they ask, what is it you want to do? And it really kind of blows people's minds when you say something like that, because embedded into that 10 to 15 seconds is a lot of ideas and questions that they may percolate with, that it's going to draw them in. It's going to draw them into the interest of the topic. So when you're thinking about your esports program, like for example, Amy, you're working at an e-school. So your situation is going to be very different than Ray's, because in your e-school environment, you're connecting kids not necessarily, or maybe they are on site, but you also have the flexibility to maybe connect with kids throughout the state because of their location to Appleton. Whereas Ray, you may have a situation where, you really feel like we got to keep the kids engaged in school culture, because we know that when we let them, if we lose them out of school culture, you have a situation like mine in Racine, we know that we lose the kids to the streets, that becomes a problem, right? We want to keep them engaged, and we want to keep them with positive adult interaction, okay? Jesse, your situation in Ripon may be totally different, because look around, I don't know what Ripon's like, but I never heard of it until I met you. And there may not be a whole lot else to do in Ripon. I don't know. So I can't speak to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Where is it? Is it like in the middle of the state? Where is it? Yeah. Okay. Eh, All right, lesson learned. If you take nothing away from today, what you've learned is, as you go through Rosendale, to slow down. Okay. So as you're hearing with all this, we've got very differing views on why we may be doing this, but it's important to articulate it and know too, here's what we're also building really ultimately with all this, is this is a culture of kids who, once they become connected to each other, it's very interesting how they start to interact. It doesn't matter where they come from. What really is, it becomes interesting as they connect over the games. I can share an experience where Clinton High School, I brought a team from Case High School, my League of Legends team, and Brian, who's another one of the High School Association board members, brought his team from Clinton, and we did a League of Legends demo up in Madison. And what was funny about that was, as the day was progressing, the kids started swapping players, and they started coaching each other. And it didn't matter that it didn't matter what school the kids were part of. They were immediately connecting, and they were immediately starting to share information. You would never see this at a basketball tournament. You'd never see this at a football game. But when you look at the kids involved in esports, it's, like I said, it's a much different mindset when it comes to competition and sharing. Oh, we lost Amy, dropped off for a second. I hope she'll come back. So taking these 5 things, and what I did was I put a bunch of samples of one-pagers into the shared folder. Now, if you didn't see the link or get email that talked about the shared folder, please let me know, but I think I have everybody at least who's on the call here tonight. You've got some sample one-pagers. So so on this slide that you should see here in front of you is a sample of one of my one-pagers. Now, I also do the Academy of Esports podcast. I will give you just a plug. You can check it out if you're interested in it. And I have developed this one-pager when I talk to people about why esports and education. So I've taken my elevator pitch and now I've turned it into a one-page document, because usually especially if you meet your superintendent or somebody who's in a higher up position and they want to learn more about esports, when you talk to them after you give them your sales pitch or your elevator pitch, is they want to know more. And this document that I give is 1 page. It's very easy reading, and it allows people to find out more. And there's some really key aspects about this document that I hope that as you start to think about what this is, that you start to take away. Now, you don't have to make it look this pretty. As you can tell, I've been doing this for quite a while, so it's important to look at that. But I've included some other 1-page documents. I think I put a document about why you should use Title 4A funds to fund esports. So if you're having trouble with funding and you're a Title I school, guess what? You have Title 4A funds. And Title 4A funds are supposed to be used for technology and interesting and forward-thinking ways. And I've been working with DPI to kind of formulate some language that's going to help people to understand that they can use Title 4A funds to fund their teams. So when we break down this document, I broke it all down into different parts so you could see what it looks like. And again, all these slides are also in the shared folder that you all should have access to. So if you need to go back and reference it, everything's right here. The first thing is we want to state the program overview. So I kind of make that a thing in the document. I put in the case of what I'm doing with this document, this is for my my pitch for the Academy of Esports. I put my mission and I put my vision as well into the program overview. I also wrote short paragraphs about goals. So these goals are things that are close to what I'm doing now. In your school district, you may have what are called strategic goals. Every district usually has a list of about 4 or 5 strategic goals, maybe 6 strategic goals. They should be listed on your school website somewhere, or district website. You can, if I was to do this, and I've done this for others as well, and if you need another example, I've got some of them. I've taken actual strategic goals that schools use, make them the header of each of these boxes, and then wrote 2 or 3 sentences about how esports matches in with the strategic goal. What's interesting is a lot of people, when you just start talking to them about esports, even if you define what it is, even if you have this really great pitch, sometimes they don't really connect to that. But when you start talking about the strategic goals of the institution at which you work, now it can get ears perking up, especially when they're deficient in certain places. So like Peter, you were talking about the 25 out of 46 kids who are not involved in extracurricular activities. That to me sounds like something that would be a measurable strategic goal perhaps at your district, or maybe it's somewhere in your mission or your values. Can you speak more on that and why the board was so quick to jump on that? Was there something that they're trying to measure or something they're trying to get at? Right. And yeah, that data that you talk about is exactly where I talk about diversify opportunities for student participation. In fact, if you look at this document and there's a link in there, there's a QR code and a link. I actually have that. If you need to pull that research, I've got all that research right there, as well as articles and things that link to all these different ideas. So if you're struggling, If you're trying to figure out, hey, how do I put together this elevator pitch? How do I talk about this? I've done a lot of the work for you to get the resources that you would need to have that conversation or to support your point that you're trying to make. But yeah, that data you're talking about, Peter, that's from the 90s. That's from the early 90s, where they said, oh yeah, it increases GPA and increases attendance rates, which, especially when you're talking about attendance, I mean, we get paid every day a kid comes to school. And when you start getting kids coming to school more often, you get more money and the graduation rates increase, and you don't have to worry about credit recovery as much. Oh, I would love to do away with credit recovery, but I oversee that for my school district, so that's not a lot of fun. I don't know if you've ever done credit recovery. It's like making sausage. You just hope it comes out good on the other end. So thanks for sharing that, Peter, by the way. It's really appreciated. So again, short paragraph about your goals. And then if you can, link to supporting materials. That always, again, we're talking about layers here. So we started with that elevator pitch. You know, the 10, 15 seconds that you might have a superintendent, you're shaking the superintendent's hand, you're shaking a parent's hand, community leader, whatever. Then you got the one pager here, which kind of gets you to that next level of depth. And then they've got the links right there where they can go in and really start to dig in and look and see something that maybe they have questions about. The big thing that's been questioned lately, if you haven't been up on the news, but especially the El Paso, Texas shooting. I don't like to talk a whole lot about shootings and stuff like that, but video games was made out to be one of the causes of that shooting. And while politics may differ in this country, there is a ton of research that suggests that what was suggested about video game culture is not true. And I've got the research to prove it, and now you actually have access to that research as well. If you don't remember, I'm a child of the 80s, I guess you could say. I was born in 75, so starting from 1980, I was in kindergarten. In around 1982, there was a uptick in teenage suicide rates. And does anybody know off the top of their heads what the attributed cause was, or one of the attributed causes to that uptick in teenage suicide rates? And was made out to be the big monster. 60 Minutes actually did a story on it. And you can go on YouTube and find this and watch it. And any guesses? Kind of. That was there was actually, it was more about heavy metal specifically before rap music came out, but there was one game that, and I use game, we don't think of it probably much as a game anymore, but it is a game. It is Dungeons and Dragons. So if you do a search on YouTube and you do a search for Dungeons and Dragons 60 Minutes, you'll find a story from the early 80s where they detail that the suicide, the uprise in suicide rates is related to that. So it's important that you're up on your research. If you have a couple of weeks, we have a couple of weeks till school starts. If you have opportunities to read one book in that time, the one book I would highly recommend every one of you read is a book called Moral Combat. And you can get it on Amazon. It's about $15, but it's called Moral Combat. And it goes into the research that has been done to date and some of the thoughts and ideas that people have made about gaming and gaming culture. And like I said, it's always good now that you're in this general manager role to be prepared, because I can guarantee you, especially with this, you're going to have parents who are going to ask questions about all this. So you want to make sure that you are prepared with resources to have an intelligent discussion with them about it, because you're talking about their babies, and their babies are very important to them, and they want to make sure their babies are in a safe space and they're protected. So do get educated about that. Also, with any of these one-page documents, if you have a one-page flyer or something you're going to hand out to parents or other leaders or people, if you do an open house and you have something about it, please do make sure to include your contact information. It is very common that people do come back with follow-up questions. Also, because this is a very popular topic right now, you may be asked to do speaking engagements. You may be asked to come in and give your thoughts about esports and what your program is and how you're doing it in your schools. There's a lot of people out there right now who are very interested in this topic. And there is a big rush in a lot of ways. There's a rush to implementation, so we want to make sure that we're thinking through all of this in a methodical way to think about how can we help people be informed in this space. So, any thoughts or questions before we go on here? Okay. So, in conclusion, this is the homework, I guess, if you will, is to take time, if you need to look at the forms that I've put in the share drive, and I want to hopefully encourage you. Again, I can't call your schools and tell them that you can't start working until you get your homework done, but I hope and I encourage you to start to develop your one-pager. Start thinking about what it is you're trying to do with esports. It's important to think about those things now. And the reason why you want to start thinking about those things now is it's very easy to jump right in, start playing games, and just focus on the games. It's a lot better to really think out what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and come up with some methodologies on how you're going to implement that going forward. For example, the mental and physical health part. To say to people, we're going to worry about teaching kids how to do some weight training or doing some yoga breathing or things like that. We'll do that later. But that doesn't become part of your culture right off the bat. You're really starting to develop a culture and a mindset to try to hopefully help kids have, in our case at least, we're trying to help kids have a positive mental health and a positive physical health. And for a lot of kids, they've never thought of how important those things are in gaming and in being successful in gaming. You'll want to make sure that you're part of the WIHSEA Discord server. I can send out a link to you about that later. I did not put it in here because Discord, I think, is going to be covered in our second session. And Discord can be a little bit messy if you're not sure what you're getting into right out the gate. So I want to make sure that you kind of have an overview on that if you're not already part of it. If you want to get into it, that's fine. I can send out the link, but there'll be more in-depth conversation about what Discord is, how do you use it. That's going to be in one of the future sessions here. So, yeah, go ahead, Jesse. Okay. Yeah. So, any other thoughts, questions, concerns? We are wrapping up a little early, but that's okay. I know we all have our lives to live, and like I said, this can give you a couple of minutes at least to get you started on your one-pagers. And if you start working on your one-pager and you just need a second pair of eyes, you can just share the document with me. Happy to take a look at it, happy to give you some feedback. And if you have other questions about your program or how you're getting started or things are not getting answered for you, please do reach out to me, reach out to Jesse. There's actually about 5 of us who kind of helped put all this together. So we can all be part of the conversation and help each other out. But like I said, if you have anything specific, please do reach out to me or Jesse, and we can help get you pointed in the right direction. Anything else for tonight? I see that there's things popping up into the chat, but again, I can't see them. Is everything good in the chat? Okay, go ahead. And Jesse, if you would share a copy of that into the share drive as well. Cool. All right, then. If nobody else has any other questions, thank you very much for being on tonight. And we'll be on again next week, same time, about 6 o'clock on the 27th. All right. Thanks, everybody.